Hello, this is Robert Rickover. I'm an Alexander Technique teacher in Omaha, Nebraska. I teach mainly online. My guest, who you'll notice is standing up, and I'll explain why in a moment, is Imogen Ragone, an Alexander Technique teacher in Wilmington, Delaware, who also teaches primarily online. And Imogen, thank you for doing this. Welcome to the whatever it is we're doing here. Podcast. It'll be a podcast and a video. I want to talk today about power poses. You were the person who actually introduced me to power poses. They were, I think it was a lady named Amy Cuddy.
Amy Cuddy.
Who's a professor at Harvard, I think. I'm not
She
sure.
was. Yeah.
Anyway, she had this idea that if you would put yourself in a certain posture, as it were, for maybe she was suggesting 20 or 30 seconds. I'm not sure what the original idea was, but that basically if you would raise your arms, I'm sitting right now, but I think it's most dramatic with standing, although I think you could do part of this sitting. If you bring your arms up like this and leave them up there for a while, a few seconds maybe, and then bring them down, that you will have a more expansive posture. You'll have perhaps more self-confidence. I think that was the general idea.
Yeah, the one that really caught on was the kind of Superman Wonder Woman pose like this. So.
Oh, okay. Well,
but there was also like the V for victory.
Oh, V for victory, and then the other one was hands on your hips.
Yeah, kind of like one, but a wider stance too.
Wider stance. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just as a point, there were some aspects of the experiments that she did that were not able to be replicated in other studies, and that was to do with the stress, the hormones. But there's loads of studies that have correlations between mood and posture. So.
Right, exactly. And I think I've been thinking about this. I haven't thought about power poses in a long time, but I started thinking about it a few weeks ago. And I've come to the conclusion that the basic idea makes sense, but I think she left out two important factors, which I am going to introduce to you. First of all, though, just to go back to the original, let's just take the V one to start with. When you move your hands over your head, it doesn't even have to be a V. If you can't reach that far, just like that's fine, you know? Just getting your arms higher up than they normally are. One thing that does is it raises your internal center of gravity. Right. So, if that's the case, then just that by itself is likely to create, even after you bring your arms down, there might be a little period when that little bit higher center of gravity persists, and that's going to mean some expansion in your torso, little opening up in your torso. That's what center of gravity is all about. Now, obviously, if you bring your arms up and your center of gravity goes up and you bring them down right away, and you just, you could just end up bringing your center back to where it was. But for example, if you were to bring your arms up, a la this, just do that again, once more. And this time, when you bring them down, just be very clear in your thinking that the only thing that's going down is your arms. Now, you might notice a little difference when you did that, because you're basically saying, I'm not going to depress my center of gravity just because my arms have come down, right?
This is very similar to and actually a movement I do with a lot of my students, which I call corkscrew, which if you think of one of those corkscrews with the handles that go like that. So it's like as your arms come up, as the arms go down, this is still going. If you think of the corkscrew, the cork's going up.
Okay. Oh, like
So
those
that
corkscrew wine bottle. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
like that kind.
So not even
So that's the same. I never
same general
related it to center of gravity though, which is the exact same thing, really.
I
Yeah.
would say that what's going on here, if you say, well, I'm just lowering my arms and I'm leaving the rest of me alone, it's not so much that your center is going up as you bring your arms down, it's just not going down.
Exactly.
So, but I think what Amy Cuddy was suggesting is you do some power poses and then you maybe just before you were going to give a presentation to a group of people, maybe even just the other side of the door, you're powered up and you open the door and in you come and you are a little expanded, even without doing any thinking at all, other than this raising your arms and lowering them. A little upward movement of your center of gravity doesn't totally go down right away. So you come in the room and there you are, a bit expanded. And, you know, as they say, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. You've made your first impression as a more powerful person. Now, I could see that, but I think it could be improved upon in two ways. Two ways. One is to make this raising of your internal center of gravity even more profound. And the way you could do that very easily, as you'll discover in a second, as you raise your arms, also bend your knees. Now your center of gravity is a lot higher. And then lower your arms and unbend your knees. Some of that may stick around, but, and you could, well, first of all, did you notice perhaps a little more upness?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
So it just, if step A is just to learn how to get your internal center of gravity higher, you could do a lot by adding the legs, because the way the center of gravity, where it is related to the square of the distance to different parts of you. And when you're bending your knees, a large part of you is now closer, so your center of gravity goes up. So
I'm also wondering,
it's a bigger bang for your buck. That's part A.
I'm also curious, or maybe you're coming to this, but the very fact that you have raised your eyes, but you've bent your knees, that you, even though these are lowering, you're going up
internally.
No, I mean, but you're actually literally rising up because your knees aren't bent anymore.
You're unbending.
Helps you maybe not kind of go down with your arms.
Or you could still say when you go out of that pose that for the upper part of your body, the only thing that's going down is your arms, as we did before. And I think the unbending of the legs, we could talk, I think, to get at the continuing the benefits of that will require step B. So we got step A, which is, you know, a little more powerful than just arm raising. Although I think it's important to say not everyone can get their arms up this high. So, you know, just getting them up like that.
Not everyone can bend their knees very far either. So, but it only has to be a tiny little bit, right?
A little bit would be fine if that's all you can do. You know, this isn't an exercise in testing your range of movement here. It's really just using some basic biomechanics to get your center of gravity higher, which is going to bring about an expansion in your torso, particularly your upper torso, and will certainly give you the appearance and possibly the feeling, I imagine, of more power, right? Now, the second thing that I think she missed is how to continue that once you've done it a few times, say, outside the, you're outside a room where you're going to go in and make this presentation. Presumably you do this somewhere where there are not too many
Yeah,
people.
you don't want to have to do this in the middle.
No,
of
you don't
your
want to have to, you don't want to have to say, oops, I lost it. Let me just do a little. No, you don't want to have to do that. So, and I think the simplest way to ensure, or to make it more likely, perhaps, that you can, that upward internal movement of your center of gravity continues, is to use a very simple Alexander technique direction. And you could experiment with different ones, but one that I think fits pretty nicely, you could just use I'm free. That would probably be a good direction. But how about experimenting with this? Put yourself in that power pose with your knees bent, and then just say think to yourself, as I come out of that pose, I'm not compressing myself. And then you might say, well, I'm free to repeat the pose. So you're using a direction for going into it. And now as you come out of it, I'm not compressing myself. And what do you notice?
I feel pretty expansive. I think that's really nice that I'm not compressing myself. Sorry, I'm not compressing myself. Yeah.
So that one way to, so there's two steps here. You increase in the upward movement of your internal center of gravity by adding the leg component. And interestingly enough, the version you showed me, the one with your hands on your hips and your legs further apart, legs further apart is raising your center of gravity.
And this is, I presume this is still raising my hands from.
Yep. Yeah. And in fact, there's no reason why you couldn't have your legs further apart and arms up and bend your knees and really max out. I mean, this is something you could experiment with. But the point is, you can get a bigger amount, and using Alexander directions, very simple directions, you can expand the amount of time that this effect lasts, and you can continue it. The other way to use this that's sort of interesting that I played with is if you were to do a series of these movements where you're bringing your arms up and bending your knees, and on the way down, I'm free. On the way up, I'm not compressing myself, and do that several times, fairly quickly, even if you want. Yeah. And you might find you get a little extra oomph that way, like almost like a little pumping up. Yeah. So
I thought you said this wasn't an exercise class.
Not an exercise. No, it's not an exercise. You could also, by the way, you could get your internal center of gravity if you happen to have a chair or a stool behind you. I don't think we need to do this, but let's say you did. It doesn't, we could. You could, oh, look at that. I don't think I've seen that. So, okay. So what you'll combine is arms up and you sitting in that, but I'm free is the background direction, so that you never end up sinking into the chair. That's not what, yeah. And then you could stand up with the thought, I'm not compressing myself. So you could get your center of gravity, that additional amount, further up internally, simply by going from standing to sitting, and then using a direction to continue that once you're back standing again. That's all I got. Just, it seems like she left out
Yeah,
two things.
yeah. I mean,
my take
that's
on
really interesting, because I remember at the time when I was very interested in it, I even made a little audio for doing the Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
But obviously I was giving people different ideas for directions or constructive thinking. Wow, because that was the piece that was missing. You could do that in a very tight, compressed way.
Of course, yeah.
And you know, and maybe it still gives you something if you're doing it
Probably
tight.
does give you something.
Yeah. But if we
into
have ideas, but the center of gravity, that's really interesting about the center of gravity. Yeah.
And just for any viewers or listeners who are confused by, well, when you bend your knees, you're lowering yourself in space. So obviously your center of gravity does go down in space.
But within
we're
you.
talking about internally, it goes up within you. And that's the key that we're talking about. So that's all I got. Do you have any questions or anything you want to add?
No, thank you. That's very interesting. I'll play with that.
Okay, well, my guest today has been Imogen Ragone, an Alexander teacher in Wilmington, Delaware. Thank you.
Thank you.